Hello, welcome back to Suburban Hunt 365. I am DJ, back in the reloading room again today. Now, today is going to be the third of the 3 precision rifle projectiles that we've got. And today's video is going to be the Extreme Elite hollow points. If you guys haven't seen it already, the first video we did was the precision QTs. I'll leave the link above. Followed by the last one that we did, which was the precision dead centers. Now these are 340 grains and the QTs were a 250 grain projectile. But today's video is going to be the Extreme Elite hollow points, and these are a 260 grain, if I can get in there, projectile. So the QTs didn't do so great, dead centers did pretty well. So let's get into it and let's figure out how these are going to do. Now, for those of you that may be new to the channel, this is what we're going to be doing is our pellet test, where we're going to take 777 50 grain pellets. We're going to do 100 and 150 grain charge, followed by Pyrodex, also 50 grain pellets, 100 and 150 grain charge. Moving on to the white hots, 100 and 150 grain charge. Moving into the 777 FireStars. Now these are going to be a 3 pellet and a 4 pellet, because if you may not know, these are 33 grain pellets instead of 50. And then last but certainly not least is our 777 Magnum's 60 grain pellets. We'll be using 2 of those. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it and see how this one does. 777 100 grain charge. Alright, not too great of a start there. That is a 4 5/8 of an inch group. So not great, but also the 777s are fighting for last place as far as the average group size across the different projectiles that we're going to be that we've used. So not a real big surprise there. So let's go ahead and let's go to one of the better ones, 777 150 grain charge. All right, much better. That actually came in at a 2 3/4 of an inch group. 2 and 3, pretty dang close there. So we have seen in the past some of the groups that maybe you need to do that sacrificial projectile. I'm not a big advocate of that because I don't like wasting materials. But sometimes it seems like if you dirty up your barrel, the next couple shots may work out pretty well. Now, getting into that real quick before we move on to the Pyrodex, the QTs we mentioned were a nightmare to get in to my barrel. The dead centers worked really, really well. As a matter of fact, the QTs, if you recall, I had to basically swap the bore every time just to get these things down into place, putting in position. These extremes weren't that bad. They weren't as good at getting in there as the dead centers were, so we didn't end up cleaning in between each one of these shots. As far as cleaning goes, all I do is run a bore snake through there, just to remind you guys, or for those of you that haven't seen those yet. Between each shot on the QTs, I had to run a bore snake just to clean the crown enough to get the projectile even to go down into the barrel. So did not have any, the dead centers didn't have to have that at all. I was able to shoot all 3 with those. Now with this one, I was also able to shoot all 3, the third one being rather stiff to get in there. But just wanted to make you guys aware of that. So moving on, we just had a 2 3/4 inch 150 grain 777. So let's go ahead and let's move into the Pyrodex 100 grain charge. All right, that's a 2 1/2 inch group. So we're getting tighter. This is actually getting pretty decent. Not mad at a 2 1/2 inch group here with the Pyrodex 100 grain charge. I always love to see it when shot 1 and shot 2 are right next to each other. Shot 3 did kind of go off to the left there a little bit, but 1 and 2, I love seeing them when they go in like that. All right, so getting into the cleaning, guys, basically what I do is after every 3 shot group is when I go through and I clean my barrel. Because there again, my my thought on that is I want to be able to mimic what I'm going to do in the woods if I need to make a follow-up shot. So this is not for target practice. This is not for competition. This is for hunting. That's what I do. So I don't clean in between each shot because of the fact that I want to see what it will do when I'm out in the woods. So 2.5 inch group. It's not too shabby. Most of the time when I go up to the 150 grain load, it works better. So let's see if we can get that in this instance as well. Pyrodex, 150 grains. Alright, well, I said it before, and I really do got to quit making predictions on this because that is a 3-inch group. Still somewhat respectable as far as across all of the different projectiles and powders that we've done. My gun seems to land in that 3 to 3.5 group size on average. So 3, not terrible, and at 100 yards. So we could do better, obviously, with the 2.5 inch group with the Pyrodex, 100 grains. So not too bad so far. We've had the one group that's kind of a little high 4, 4 or 5/8 inch there. The rest of them have been below that 3-inch mark, with the Pyrodex 150 coming in at 3 inches. So let's go ahead and let's move over to the white hot 100 grains. See how that does. Okay, that came in at 5 3/4 inch. That's gonna hurt that average pretty good. It's not great, 5 3/4. But what I want you to look at here is look down in this corner here. The velocities almost match exactly 1, 2, and then 3. That first velocity came in at 1711, and then we've got a 1661, which was that red one right there, the one on the red dot rather. And then we got a 1593 that dropped all the way down on the target. So I really can't put a lot of the blame on that particular group on the elite hollow points. I kind of have to blame white hots for that based off these velocities. That's the only thing that can explain that, because it matches up beautifully with the drop in velocity. So not really sure exactly what happened there, but it is going to hurt the average, because like I said, up until we got one, I believe it was 4 5/8 at the beginning, and now we've got a 5 3/4. That's not going to help the average of these particular hollow point, or these hollow point elites. So that was rough. Let's go ahead and let's move to the white hot 150 grains, and let's see if we can't get it back in the range. Okay, well, that did help a little bit. That group still came in at 4.5 inches though. So not really going to help the average overall, but it is less than 5-inch group that we just got with the 100 grains. The velocities on this one are 2012, 2025, and then 2047. So our velocities are a lot closer there, which I believe is why you got a little bit better of a group on this one. So there's a chance that it was just a bad run of pellets in that tube. I don't know, but we run the test, and it is where it is, because I can't definitively tell you that it was or it wasn't the projectile, or it was or wasn't the powder. Velocities kind of lean towards the powder being an issue, but it is where it is. So over 5 inches and a 4.5 inches with the white hots. If you're running these elite hollow points, I would just stay away from the white hots. Right now, I'd be staying with this Pyrodex. The Pyrodex seem to be doing a little bit better with that. So let's get away from the white hots real quick, and let's go into the 777 FireStars. This will be with 3 pellets, 33 grains of pellet. As close as we're going to get to 100 grains. So FireStars, 3 pellets. All right, now we're back down to where we were a little bit ago with a 3-inch group. So again, I'm not really sure what happened with those white hots, but this projectile may just not like the white hots. Certain pressures, certain velocities, it just doesn't care for. So FireStar, 3 pellets, 3-inch group. That is not too terrible at 100 yards. So we're getting back into it, right? We're getting back into it. So let's go ahead and let's move into the FireStar's 4 pellets, and let's see if we can keep this going. Dadgummit, man, ouch. That's rough. That ended up being a 7-inch group from top to bottom there. And look at the velocities, there's really nothing to explain this one, because it was a 2023, which is the highest one, and then the one below that was a 1982, followed up by a 2010. So it's the standard deviation in that group wasn't as big as with the White Hot 100 grains. So man, that's just 7 inches. That's going to absolutely murder the average for this projectile. And the other thing that kind of sucks is that the 777 100 grains and the 777 Magnums in my particular rifle, they don't like each other. The Magnums are not doing so hot. They're actually they're kind of fighting for last right now. And that's all we got left. So I'm really kind of curious to see what that's going to do. So let's do 777 Magnums 2 pellets. Ouch. 5 5/8 of an inch. But see, this one kind of mimics the same thing here. So you got that high one that was at 18, or is that 19? Got that high one at 1803, and then you had one right below it at 1846, and then it drops down to the 1797. So I really don't understand why this seems to be so squirrely with the different propellants. I really don't quite understand it, especially since the powders that we're using are the exact same, which are the ones behind me. They're the exact same ones that we use for the QT and that we've used for the dead centers. So while there may be some variance in the different pellets themselves, at the end of the day, what we're testing is the actual Extreme Elite HPs. And we're fixing to get into it here in a second, but there's no way this one's going to fare well at all. But before we get into that, I want you guys to know that what we're using, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, as I've been using my CVA Optima V2 and with the Conus 3-9x40 that came with it when I bought it at Walmart. And we have been and will be continuing to use the Federal 209A primers. So that's what we use. You guys have seen the shots that we just took. Let's dig into the numbers and let's figure out how this thing's going to wind up. Alright, so looking at this chart here, as you guys may recall, we started off with a 4 5/8 inch group at the 777 100 grains, followed by a 2 3/4 inch 777 150. We're just going to go straight down the list here. You got Pyrodex 100 at 2.5, which ironically takes the win today. Pyrodex 100 grain does. And then Pyrodex 150 grain at a 3 inch. White Hot's 100 grain at a 5 3/4 of an inch. White Hot 150 grain at 4.5. The 777 FireStar 3 pellets at 3 inches, and then a dismal 7 inches with the FireStar 4 pellets. And then, not doing us any favors, is the 5 5/8 of an inch there by the 777 Magnums with the 2 pellets. This is going to give us an average of 4.305. Guys, I can tell you without even looking at the rest of this chart, that's going to put us in dead last. There's no way. If memory serves, what used to be last was the 240 grain XPs or XTPs with a 3.72 average group. This is now a 4.305. And it absolutely does. That puts us in 20th place, absolute dead last. So if you're going to use these, what mine shows is to use the Pyrodex, either 100 grain or 150. 2.5 to a 3 inch group is definitely something that'll take a deer, but that's rough. So let's go ahead and let's move down to the bottom of this chart here, and let's look at where, again, from the most accurate projectile all the way down at the bottom, dead last is a 260 grain Elite hollow points. We had a little bit of movement, actually quite a bit of movement with the most accurate average in the powders. So 777 FireStar 3 pellets still leading the whole pack, where White Hot's 150 grain moved up a spot, 777 150 grain moved up 2 spots. The White Hots, which didn't it didn't do great today. That 100 grain dropped down 2 spots. The Pyrodex, which did decent, both of those jumped up a spot with the 150 leading the 100 grains. And then the 777 FireStar 4 pellets had a rough week, obviously, with that 7-inch group dropping down 3 spots. And then the 777 100 grain charge and the Magnum switched yet again this week with the 777 100 grain charge just in front of the 777 Magnums, which is now last yet again. But as I've said in the other videos, guys, if you look here at this spread between the FireStar 3 pellets and the Magnum 7 2 pellets, we have 0.638. So just a little bit over half an inch spread difference on average between these particular powders. Getting down here at the bottom, because we now have a new last place projectile, that actually opened up our spread from the first to last to a 2.443 inches. So you got about a 2.5 inch change between the best and the worst on average. Alright guys, so if I'm going to be using a precision rifle product, out of the ones we tested so far, the dead center 340 grain is what I'm going to be using. Now, we did have a comment on the last video from Jason. I apologize if I butchered this. Gerard, I believe that's what that's pronounced. He asked about the dead center duplexed, and I didn't see that on the website until after he said something. I went back and looked at it. It is a precision rifle product, and it actually has 2 sabots in it, which is why it's called duplex. And he was actually kind enough to send us enough to do this test. So you can actually see this is 195 grains. Now this is a 357 projectile with, I'm assuming, I don't know, I'm not going to assume. So yeah, the 357 projectile that is saboed up to what can be put into a 50 cal sabot as well. So we got the duplex here. But on the back of this, you can actually read on the pack. I'm going to see if I can get this in here. The 340 grain projectile is a 45, which is what we were using here. So basically this dead center is a 340 grain 45 that has been saboed to a 50 cal. And then this one is the, you zoom back in here, the 195 grain that is a 357 projectile. So we got it saboed from a 357 up to the 50 with the 2 different sabots. I never seen anything like this, so I'm really kind of curious to see how this is going to end up on the test. So that'll be what comes up next, guys. So if you guys have made it this far, I truly do appreciate you guys. There were really no fireworks with this one, except for the fact that it just has some pretty rough groups in there. So if you guys haven't already, please do us a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, let YouTube know that you guys appreciate this kind of content. And then finally, as always, comment down below. This channel, what I do, what we test, is driven by your comments, case and point. I definitely appreciate you, Jason, for stepping up and sending those to me. Guys, it is not a small feat. These tests cost money. We're not sponsored by anybody. So for a person to step up and actually provide those is a huge deal. Can't thank you enough for that, Jason. Really can't. So again, from Suburban Hunt 365, I'm DJ. Guys, we'll catch you on the next one.